Have you ever wanted something so bad, but when you got it, you realized it wasn't what you needed? Or what about getting something that you didn't want, only to find it was exactly what you needed? Today, I'm joined by my dear friend, Heather Whitehead. This is a part of her story. Heather is the real deal. And in her journey to finding health and healing, she acknowledges that while she didn't get what she wanted, she most definitely got so much more.
Welcome to this segment of Contagious Courage with VN King.
In studio with me today is my dear friend, Heather Whitehead, visiting all the way from Ontario. Thank you so much for being here today, Heather.
It's so great to actually see you, VN, and to come out here and be able to do this in person as opposed to just being able to do it over Zoom. So it's great to be in studio here with you.
Right? Heather and I have known each other for like over 15 years, and we've connected again over Zoom, but it's led to this point. And Heather has an advanced diploma in biotechnology, a Bachelor of Art honors, might I add, a BA in psychology, and she's currently attending McMaster's Divinity College, doing a Master of Theology Studies, majoring in pastoral. Wow, that was a mouthful. Yes, so Heather, tell us a little bit about you and what you're passionate about.
Well, I was raised in the church, and then I left for the last 20 years. And then after we reconnected, I started going back to an online church. And now I'm really passionate about reaching the lost. And then also just mental health issues, because I've had issues in the past myself. And so I want to be able to help them out through various counseling that I'm taking through school.
Heather, what has been one of the challenges that you faced, or maybe still facing, that took you by surprise?
Definitely facing cancer in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, having cancer alone has enough challenges, but trying to go through it in the middle of a pandemic when, all of your supports aren't there. My sister wasn't able to be there for me. I just had to go through a lot of extra challenges and a lot of changes to deal with it, because what you would normally have just didn't exist because of everything that was going on.
Right. So did you get diagnosed during COVID?
Well, I got diagnosed in February, so it was that in between where COVID was a word, but it was something that was happening somewhere else.
Right.
But it was after I got diagnosed that the lockdown started happening here in Canada, and so by the time I went through any sort of treatment, we were already under the lockdowns.
Right. So tell us a little bit about that process of going through cancer in COVID. What was that like?
It was difficult because my sister was going to come down to help me out, and she wasn't able to. Things like volunteer drivers weren't there to go to your treatment. Fortunately, Uber stepped up to give free rides to cancer patients for their treatment. I had one person that was able to be there, my friend John, who was a lifesaver because he came in, day out, because I had to limit the number of people that were around me just because I didn't want to take the chance because I was now high risk for COVID, so I didn't want anybody else, so he stepped up and was there. I had to get people to help out with meals and things that I really wasn't expecting to have happen, so it was definitely a challenging time, just with the added pressures. And when I needed extra treatment, then I had to go out every day into that environment, which was terrifying.
Definitely something that took you by surprise, and you've been just a trooper, the way that you've handled everything that's come your way. And on that note, Heather, I want to ask you, what would you say is your biggest struggle in your faith journey? And how have you overcome or still overcoming those challenges?
Well, I'm definitely still a work in progress, like I think everybody is. But really it's like a comparison chart because I'm relatively new coming back to the faith. So I see other people and I start comparing myself, and then it leads me to feel like I'm not worthy. So it's definitely still a work in progress, but it's getting better. But there's still, the enemy likes to lie and tell you that you're not good enough.
Right. And I know when I introduced you, I talked about your education, and now you're actually stepping into Bible college, and that's crazy to think that when we first reconnected that you weren't, you were away from God, and now you're back serving the Lord, and not only that, you're following him through to ministry. And so that is such an amazing thing to watch and see unfold. And so on that note, what is the biggest lie that has threatened you in your faith journey, or your ability to see yourself as a leader? What has been a lie that has been one of the things that you've had to push through the most?
The big one going into school was just, I kept hearing this voice saying, I'm not enough. And it really hit me because, a lot of people, they plan for years to do Bible college. Like, they do their undergrad and then they're doing their master's, or, people were lay pastors, or they were, there was one lady that was married to a pastor and was now going through. So going in, I kind of had that weight that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't spiritual enough, that I needed to have been in church for years. And it didn't help that, one of the schools was like, you have to have been in church for a year. And I'm like, but I was in church a long time ago, and I've got that passion and that desire to reach the lost. But so that kind of didn't help with hearing the voices in my head of like, you're not enough. And, you need to have been in church for 20 years and know the Bible inside and out, or, to even have read the Bible, through in its entirety.
Yes.
So, yeah.
I've been really blessed to have been reconnected with you, Heather, because this is a two-way street. We journeyed together, and I was so excited to write that reference letter for you to go into Bible college, and with the whole mental health and trauma, like, you've helped me learn how to walk beside somebody, and it's not only just a one-way street, and that's the beauty of what God does when He brings people together. We get to celebrate each other, we get to grow together, we get that iron sharpening iron thing. That is the beauty of what God does when He does it well.
I love that verse.
Yes, repeat it.
That iron sharpens iron.
Yes, I love that verse too. So we haven't even really scratched the surface of all of the things that you've had to go through, even before COVID and during COVID, with your cancer journey, and your own journey with mental health, and all the things that you've had to get through to overcome to be here today. What has been the biggest barrier that you find to people asking for help or getting the help they need? What do you think the biggest barrier would be in people wanting to get help?
I'd have to say social media, because we're just so consumed by the likes, and we present this fake image of how our life is so perfect. And you see that throughout, that, when everybody's posting, oh, I just got this new car, I just got this new house, I went on vacation. But you're not seeing the day-to-day struggles. You're not seeing what they're actually going through, because nobody wants to share that, because nobody else is sharing it. Mm-hmm. So all you get is these perfect images, which then makes you feel worse about how you're doing, or you don't want to admit that you're struggling because, everybody else has this perfect life, and that's all we ever get to see on social media. So right. I think there's a real disconnect from real life. And the more time that we spend on social media, the more it just impacts that, and the worse we feel about ourselves, because those are the images that we're seeing.
Right. I think back to when we were connecting online, and I remember when you were telling me that your nurse, while you were in chemo, she said something to you that made you realize that maybe you had to kind of step out and ask for help, and that was a struggle. But just tell me what she asked you and what you did.
So I asked her what foods I should eat and what I should stay away from, and she never once answered that question. She asked me how I was doing mentally, and I was like, oh, whatever, I'm surviving, what do you want me to say? And she was just like, how are you, no really, how are you doing? You're in the middle of a pandemic, we're under a lockdown, how are you doing? And I was like, well, I've got Facebook, I've got whatever. And she's like, no, really, are you talking to him? And I was like, I've got text message. I don't, I've got Facebook Messenger. I'm okay. And she's like, no, really, are you talking to anybody? And I was like, well, no. And she's like, well, you really need to talk to somebody. You're at home, you're isolated, you've got limited contact. You really need that face-to-face contact with people. And one of the things that struck me by that was that all of my friends that I've known for years were like, no, not it, because they know that I don't like the phone. I used to work in call centers, they just made excuses. But Vian here, who, we'd really just reconnected, was a lifesaver in that moment. She just, agreed to check in once a week, and she would call me and FaceTime me and got me through the chemo. So
yeah. That was brave of you to acknowledge that you needed help because you made yourself vulnerable. That is just God. And when you came back into my life, I just really felt that God connected us. And today is just an amazing testimony of that. And speaking of testimony, I want to talk about transformations. What is one of your favorite stories of transformation or impact?
So going through cancer, I mean, obviously that's a big deal for 2020, of course. But when I got to the end of the year, it was, I was coming up with a gratitude list. I wanted to come up with one thing for each month that I was grateful for. And I realized in that moment that I was grateful for the cancer journey. Not that I was grateful for going through chemo, not that I was grateful for having to go through that, but I was grateful for where it's brought me and where I am now, because without it, I never would have gone back to church. I wouldn't be where I am now. I'd be stuck in the same rut of just doing the same thing over and over and over. But now, I'm, as you said, I'm going to Bible college. Yeah. I have a passion for reaching the lost. There's just so many things that have changed. And I got a jersey made with my name on it in the year 20. And in part, I want to recognize the cancer journey, but more than that, I wanted to recognize the return to faith that 2020 brought with it. So it was definitely a transformation I never expected. And, certain things along the way were definitely a challenge, but I look at where I am now and, I'm stronger, I'm better than ever. So,
So from all the different challenges, because there's a lot, and you will hear more from Heather because we are working on some more amazing messages of hope and courage that you will definitely not want to miss. But Heather, from all the different challenges and things that you've experienced in your journey, what life lesson has made the greatest impact on the way that you live your life now?
I mean, there's two things. One, to be grateful for what you have, because you never know what tomorrow is going to bring. So, and we're really blessed here in Canada to have a lot of things that, other countries may not have. So, I mean, definitely the gratitude is up there, but also the small things. Because I definitely feel like there's, that people are paying attention, with Vian just stepping up. I mean, we were basically acquaintances when this all started. And here she was checking in on me, just following up. She got a church involved when I needed help, and she wasn't doing it for any sort of fanfare. And then the church that got involved, they cooked me meals in the middle of a pandemic when they didn't have to. So I just really noticed all of the small things and the little kind of steps along the way of where God's providing and has his hand in everything, even the smallest details. So I don't take that for granted.
Yes, you did a whole month of gratitude, and yes, and if you're not following Heather already, please do, because there's so much more to this girl that you don't want to miss. What are some of the daily habits? We all are a work in progress, and we haven't got it all figured out yet. But what are some of the things that you're learning or trying to learn? Daily habits that have helped you keep focused and stay motivated through your journey.
Well, I'm working on being more transparent, because transparency and being vulnerable is not something that comes naturally, because I do have a background with trauma in it. So I'm working daily, and as you said, it's still a work in progress, but I'm definitely working on being more transparent and being open to people.
And I want to say that's a back and forth thing. We talked about iron sharpening iron, and I'm the strong one, yay, right? And so it's just been so beautiful that we've had that relationship. We don't have to be strong all the time, right? As we wrap up here today, Heather, what could you say that maybe would help someone find the courage to start over or maybe keep moving in their journey? What would you like to say?
Well, I know for me, going through cancer, obviously that's a big deal. It's very time consuming, takes a lot of your energy when you're going through it. But we all go through difficult seasons. And what I realized after the fact is that it was literally 1% of my life, which in the grand scheme of things was not a whole lot of time. So I guess what I take away from the whole thing is that don't let the 1% dictate the other 99% of your life, because there's so much more to life than one season and one difficulty, for sure.
Wow, Heather, thank you so much. There's so much more to your story, and this is just the beginning. I think today, guys, let's be open, let's be real. And what we've heard from Heather's story is, God, while he might not always give us what we want, but he gives us so much more. But all that I want to leave you with is, not to us, O Lord, not to us, but to you and your name goes all the honor and glory for his unfailing love and faithfulness. And until next time, bye for now.
I only wanted to like hug you halfway through.
Oh, oh, that's awesome. Have you? That's right. H is supposed to be there.